Hey guys, welcome back to the Coach Steve Show podcast. Today I have another great football coach with me, Coach Vaughn, who was gracious enough to join this little podcast of mine. Coach, welcome. Thank you so much. Could you please introduce yourself to my 25 fans, maybe now, I think.
I appreciate you having me on. My name is Eric Vaughn. I live in Tennessee, coach just across the state line in Virginia at Castlewood High School.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think you're the first one I've had that lives in one state and coaches in another state. That's
Yeah,
pretty wild. You don't hear that very often.
yeah. It's neat. It's fun, but in the COVID era, it's a little frustrating. But you know, we deal with it as we can, just like we ask the kids to do. All that good coach speak.
Yeah, right before we recorded, you told me how they're playing, but then where you coach, they're not playing. So it's like you have to watch these
Yeah,
schools play. But like you just said, you can use that in, that coaching philosophy we get. You can tell the kids, like, this is what I'm going through every day. So we have to get through it. You can turn it into a positive. But we coaches are losing our minds. So it probably doesn't help to see that.
no, it has made it that much more difficult. I will own that. Um, my wife will attest to my fair share of man tantrums that I have thrown. Um, so yeah, it's not been easy. Like we were talking before we started. Me and the head coach live 40 minutes away from the school in the state of Tennessee. We cross the state line is where we coach, and so all of the coaching circle that we know have been lining it up on Fridays and having fun. And we went to one game together as a staff. Uh, we went to a school that a guy, our head coach used to coach at. So we went to one of their games, and um, I've watched several on local, but it's just been kind of it's depressing to watch it and be so close to it, but you and your guys can't like go at it. So it's you know
Yeah. I remember Utah had a game like way back when that was like the first high school game in the United States.
Mhm.
I was watching on YouTube, and then every week I was trying to find them. Then as it went on, I was you're different. You were there. Me watching on YouTube, I started to get mad. I was like, wait a minute, like
Mhm.
I want to be on the sideline right now. Like I'm at a new school, so I was really itching. They brought me on as an offensive line run game coordinator. I really wanted to get going, and so no offense to those high school teams that were going on YouTube, I couldn't watch it anymore. I was like, I'm gonna stick to college, but it's pissing me off. Like I can't go
Yeah.
help the kids. I can't go coach. I can't do any of that. So this podcast is therapy a little bit.
Well, there we go.
And like I said this every time, I need to start charging people. I won't do it now. You're good. But eventually I may have to,
Yeah.
$2 an hour for my time.
$2 an hour. Yeah. I
Maybe.
I w- I went to the Twitterverse to track down a lot of links for games and streamed a bunch of guys that our coaching styles are similar, our offenses are similar, and so I did that. It was still frustrating. I think for me that was easier than watching the local access, right, for the
Mhm.
teams that were playing 10 minutes over here where my kids go to school, or 15-20 minutes down the road where you know if you can drive to have date night with your wife and see the lights on in the distance, it's not fair. Like there's no words that I can say on this podcast for those feelings.
There's no talking for the first 15 minutes of that date. Like
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
to sit there and order an adult beverage and be like, I have to deal with this for a second.
yeah.
Face me away from the window so I don't see the freaking lights. And
Yep.
no, Twitter's great for that. Twitter's good or bad, but I love it. It can be really good or really bad. Um, and I chose the good side of it. So when I see something I don't like, I try not to get involved. Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Uh, like this might be the small version. I posted a while back. I was on Coach Salas, his show, and I was showing him my version of Inside Zone. But some people say it's duo, the way it's blocks I double team all over the place. So I was just curious. So I screenshotted it and I put it on Twitter and I said, guys, what is this to you? Inside zone, or you think it's duo? I'm just wondering. Oh goodness, I shouldn't have done that. I opened up a can of worms. I didn't have the running back drawn right on one of them. Like, oh, the angle of your running back tells me it's this. I'm like, guys, it was just a quick huddle thing.
Yeah.
And then I think that's the most comments I've had on a Twitter post my whole life. So I was like, just people left and right. And then, no, that's inside zone. No, that's duo. It can't be duo or it can't be inside zone because you're not doing this. It's not traditional. And I was like, I should not have done this. Or like, well, you don't know this. I'm like, oh, like, sorry.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I'm not looking forward to um with the podcast that I'm going to start. Um you know, and I don't want to plug all that right now and all that jazz, but when you start talking about a specific topic, and there's a lot of guys who have been involved with that section of football for a long time, and you start putting stuff out there, I know that a lot of them are going to they're going to say, all right, that's cool. I like the way that you do that. The other part of them are going to be, they're going to be in the DM saying, well, why would you do that? Why would you, I'd never do that. Why did you have this there? Why wouldn't you just do this? Why would you use, and I understand we break down film, we pick things apart. That's what we do, but I'm braced for that fully.
Well, and some of those coaches are just stuck in their ways, or it's coaches that have never learned how to talk to coaches. I'm real big on, see, this is the rabbit hole. You got to pull me back out if I go too deep. I've made mistakes as a coach, but I've seen, I was a young offense coordinator. I was like 25, 24, 25. But I learned very quickly how to talk to coaches. Like, you don't go up to a guy that's calling plays or the head coach and say, why did you do this? Or what are you seeing? Like, there's a way to talk about it. And I'll never forget, I had a young coach. He was so excited. We put him in the box. I told him to tell me what the corners are doing and our wide receivers are doing. I'm going to focus on the quarterback because I was coaching quarterbacks at the time. And I'll never forget, I called a play. It was halftime. I was trying to score. I called the traditional flood. I'll never forget. I called flood. We go back. The reason why I called is because there's a one high, and I'm like, what beats that? You overload them. It's just I'm simple. We
Hmm.
go in the locker room. He just goes off and was like, "What did you see? Why would you call that?" And I told him he needs to be quiet. I'm looking at huddle sideline. He kept going off, and I just said words I'm not going to repeat. And that reminds me of that. It reminds me of that. So like Twitter, you have coaches that just want to act tough. They're stuck in their ways, or they just never learned how you talk to somebody. Like if you put something up about the wing tee, me personally, I might be like, "Oh, that's really cool. What's the read here, or what are you guys looking at?" I would ask it that way, not be like, "Why would you do that?" I'd be like, "Oh, like what are you looking at?" Like, but I guess I am an asshole, but I'm not a big asshole, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, no, I got you. Um, for me, I think podcasts and talking to coaches has to go along with the old adage of um the story that says, I met a man, we each had a dollar, we exchanged a dollar, we left with a dollar. I met
Mm,
a man, we both had ideas, we exchanged ideas, and now we both have more so we leave having two ideas.
right.
So there's things that are tangible that you can exchange, and it helps you, but it doesn't make you better. Then there are things that you could exchange philosophically with another coach that can set you on a different path of thinking, that can open you up to evolve yourself. And I think that a lot of guys who appear stuck in their ways to other coaches are guys, unfortunately, that never were exposed to leadership that challenged them, possibly in that way. And that's not to say that the leadership that they were under is not good, because you can have great leadership and mold you into something, and you can be a shaper of young men, and do great things. But if you have a leadership that pushes you to evolve as a person, then you get to impact more people than you would, in your prior state. And so for me, that's the whole purpose of podcasts, and not just eventually, shortly down the road, getting to mine, but coming on to this podcast and the others that I've been on is not just to come and talk about what I do. It's to talk and learn and share ideas and see what they think, and ask questions and all that good stuff. So it's I think it's just it's that difference between sharing a dollar and sharing an idea.
Right. And then, and like the wars you see about offense this or versus this offense, well, this is soft, this isn't soft. I'm the person that's like, I'd rather learn from the other person. Now, I may never use it. I may never use a thing they put up. I may never use a thing they show me, but I have in my back pocket at some point for if another coach wants to learn it. Oh, hey, I learned this from Coach Vaughn or something. Like, here's what he showed me. Go reach out to him. Like, that's what my mindset goes, because it's a community and it has to grow. Like, I'll never forget one of the first people I watched on YouTube was Coach Mackey. A lot of people probably did,
Yeah.
and all of them. I've had coaches now too today, like, oh, I'm an offense coordinator. I'm looking at this. That's one of the first things that pops in my head if they're talking about spread. I'm like, oh, go look at this because
Hmm.
you can get it right now. That's just a thought. Like that was the first thing that popped in my head, but like that's in my back pocket. Like some of the stuff he does, I won't use. But guess what? It's in my back pocket. Like, oh, look, this is what he did. But if you want, go check out the YouTube. Like, uh, again, I'm stupid simple, so it's the way I think, and it's not right or wrong, but it's just the way I think. See, this is that rabbit hole I told you at the beginning. We're going to go down a rabbit hole or two. This is
Yeah.
football Joe Rogan right here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's the thing that makes podcasts interesting. Um, you know, I think that when you do hit a couple of rabbit holes, it always feels more organic to the listener. They feel like
True.
they're actually in a conversation, because
Yeah.
they hear it, and and so when they're listening to actual genuine conversation, it kind of they they become a participant in their mind, and they're listening, and while they're listening, they're thinking and listening, and so I think it engages more when you do have a couple of rabbit holes. Just
Yeah. Like
my
my beginning podcasts were just, I made this to be like an ESPN thing because I love talking sports. So it was supposed to be like recaps and all that. Well, then I did it in February. COVID hit. So guess what? There were no sports to be had. And so I stopped. And then Coach Sheffer started his. And so, like me, him, Coach Banstra, and Coach Bennett were doing um, college football teams. And then he started to get coaches on. And I said, screw it. I'm going to get coaches on. Well, at the beginning, it's like an interview. I started to realize I'm interviewing them, which is fine too, because I want to keep it to the point. I don't want to keep people on for hours. But I'm getting better. Like normally at the beginning of this, I would ask you a question. It would have been like an interview. I think I'm slowly getting better of like, let's go down this rabbit hole and then I'll come back to something. And then we'll go down another rabbit hole and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
It just depends. Depends on what mood I'm in, and depends on, I'm in a good mood because we got to work from home today. So I was like, oh, I get to be home all day.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that that's the best way. Genuine conversation. But that's why you mentioned like Joe Rogan and football. That's why everybody listens to him. I listen to the JRE clips on YouTube while I'm at work all the time.
I kind of did way back when, and then I stopped because they were just so long. And so I just stopped. Then I was coaching three sports: football, basketball, track. So I didn't have time to think,
Yeah.
especially now during this COVID. I have friends text me like, hey, go listen to him and Alex Jones. Oh, I went and listened to the first one, and I was like, oh boy, I can't stop listening. It's a train wreck.
Yeah.
Um, Tim Dillon, I think he's hilarious. I watched all of those. So I'm going back and like finding the ones I know, and I'm slowly. And then I started to realize I'm listening to this to learn how to do a podcast almost.
Hmm.
real like the coach in me was like, I'm studying this as film of like, how does he get so good? He's really smart. People don't give him credit. He's pretty smart. He knows a
Oh, yeah.
lot. And so I'm learning how to do a podcast, and then I'm reading books again. I'm like, I want to exchange my grow my mind. So I'm finding books all of a sudden and starting to read again. And I'm like, it's not just football books, it's leadership, it's positivity. It's
Mhm.
my friend told me to get this book called The Energy Bus I'm going to read. It's like 12 things you can use. The same author, he wrote How to Win the Locker Room First, him and the Atlanta Falcons coach.
Yeah.
So it's like Joe Rogan's podcast and these books. Now I'm trying to grow and learn how to do this. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm coaching without doing it. I'm not realizing it.
Yeah. When we get to that section, I've got a really good book to add that changed the way it didn't change the way I thought about things. It changed the way that I said things.
Mhm. I'm
And it,
I'm trying to find those books
yeah,
right now. Like I have my football books, like Culture to Beat Strategy. I have defensive books. I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. Um, I'm finishing up right now, Fourth and Goal Every Day, the one on Nick Saban in Alabama, how they run their program. Um, I just got the Energy Bus, the 80-20 principle. Coach Mackey told me to get that one. Extreme
that's a,
Ownership. Extreme Ownership I've read 3 times.
yep.
Like, um, I just got a book, The 12 Rules for Life. I have no idea. I just saw it. It's something that people are talking about. So I'm like, oh, sure.
Yeah. I the last book that I read, um, and it's been a little while since I read it, but it still impacts everything that I do to its core because I'm non-faculty and I'm a marketing guy for an automotive group.
Mhm.
So system and process is huge to me. Um, by trade, I'm a marketing strategist. I played football in high school. I played football in college. I played some arena ball, played in Europe a little bit, but where I made my money in my life has been in marketing. And I read the book, um, and I had it in my head until we started talking. Gosh, it's by James Clear. Um, Atomic Habits. Yeah, there we go. Atomic Habits. Because in coaching and playing ball, and then all in marketing, I always had a saying when I would work with companies, and I always say this, that goals inspire you, but systems drive you.
Mhm.
Right? So you can have, as a coach, you can have a goal to win conference and rush for so much and pass for so much, or whatever your goals are going into the season, and that's great, but your systems drive that. And so that's what I used to always say. That was my big saying. That's until I read that book, and he said something in that book that changed everything that I would say. And he put it this way, and when I read it, like, I got like the goosebumps, and because he said something in that book that was so similar to what I said that it felt like the book, like it was for me. It was just crazy. But he says in the book that you never rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the levels of your system. And when I read that, I flipped out. Like, I geeked on that for probably 3 weeks straight. And then still to this day, um, I just started working with this automotive group in September of this year in the COVID era, right?
Mhm.
And trying to work on business development with them and figuring out how to salvage what is left of the buying market for vehicles, right? The same thing, though, applies to football, but I went in and told them, like, you're going to have to, like, having your sales goals is one thing, but if you don't have the systems in place to do it, it's going to fall. And when you say it out loud, you think, well, that's simple, right? That's common sense. It makes sense. But when you start to apply it to every step of every process that you have on and off the field, right? So whether you're faculty and you teach, when you think about getting your students to a goal, what's your system to get them there? If you're non-faculty and you are a corporate guy that coaches your corporate work, you might have your goals for whatever. What are your systems to get there? And then the same thing for all of us that wear the headset. We understand offensive systems, but again, a lot of people get into those situations where they're trying to either adapt or adopt, and they get caught in that chasm of unsuredness, right? And they don't
Mhm.
know. And so they lose the ability to have their systematic approach in either play calling or player development or core development, and strategy and all those things. And then that it seems so common sense, but you catch yourself falling into the trap of, okay, I should have structured A to Z so that I could make sure that if they fail at D before we hit E, we have a catch that lets me know what we got to do to get there. And then, and it progresses us on to the end point, that ultimate goal that we've set. So for me, I would strongly encourage all coaches to read that book, Atomic Habits, because it does go in and it doesn't just talk about those things from a philosophical standpoint. I mean, he really gets down to the nitty gritty of how do you structure your day, right? For me, I found myself in the COVID era, I had gained like 25, 30 pounds.
Mhm.
And so 2 weeks ago, um, it was just one of those things where I told my wife, I was like, dude, I got to do something,
Mhm.
because we all we spend so much time, you know, yelling, pick it up, let's go, but I sat around in the COVID time picking up nothing but a fork and
Mhm.
didn't realize, like, and then all of a sudden it hit me. And so, like, in 2 weeks, I've lost 20 pounds, but I had to go back to Atomic Habits and restructure my 6 a.m. wake up to immediately get up, do your vitamins, chug a water, get on the elliptical, and then wake up the kids because we have a house full here. All right. So, like, the fact that it's quiet for any time I'm on a podcast is like literally biblical miracle. Right. So we have a 19-year-old daughter that's moved out. We have a 17-year-old son that lives here, a 15-year-old son that lives here, 14-year-old daughter here, 7-year-old son here, 5-year-old daughter here.
Wow.
So when I say it's full, it's full. And but yeah, so I had to restructure my whole morning routine. And so in 2 weeks, I've lost like 17 pounds. And so I'm starting to get down back to the way that I felt good, getting down on my weight and all that stuff. So it was a great book that helped me on a lot of major philosophical thought processes, but it was also a book that just kind of in basic little things just nudged me to remember, restructure your thinking to do it. And that's, not to give too much of it away, but that's why he labeled it Atomic Habits.
And then I feel like it allows you to realize when something's not working from a coaching perspective, like in the off season, like, okay, this wasn't working. How do we adapt? Don't change it all, but how do we tweak and adapt and see what's going on? And there's coaches out there like, nope, this is the way we do it. This is how we're going to do it. Even if we went 0-9, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Or what didn't go right. Because I mean, I've been on 0-9 team and not mad about it. It was like things we were doing in practice was translating. We just were young. It was Jimmy's and Joe's. So when we visited it, we just said, okay, it's going in the right direction. We just got to keep going. So it gives you that of like, you just got to keep going.
Yeah.
And and what you said, it's not the same thing, but kind of is. There's a Nick Saban book because I love Nick Saban. I'm a huge fan.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember if it's How Good You Want to Be or Making of a Coach. It was one of those two where he talks about the process. So it's kind of similar. He was
Mhm.
like, yes, I think it was Making of a Coach because he said the process is this, the outcome is this, but I'm not worried about the outcome. The outcome will show up if you do the process.
Exactly.
But then he also said, like, they're going to lose national championships, they're going to lose games. But if you did everything you could, that just means the other team just did one little thing extra. You did what we asked you to do. You did what the process in our program or business said. Someone else just found an extra letter in the alphabet. So guess what? We go back and create another one. Um, because in that book, I think it might have been the LSU championship. I don't remember. They won the championship. He's on up the trophy. It's in the book. And it was like, he did his 30-minute talk. And then he said, okay, coaches, meet me in the office in 10 minutes. They go to the office, they open a beer. They're all happy. They're celebrating the one national championship. He's handing them folders. You're going to this state and this state. You're going to this state and this state. And they said, whoa, 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 coach, like we just won a national championship. And he goes, yeah, we lost 2 or 3 weeks of recruiting because we were in the national championship.
Hmm.
We got to go recruit. Like he didn't smile or nothing. It was back to the process. And I think he's not that what quite that way now. He smiles a little more now the older he gets. But that kind of hits you like the process never stops.
Hmm.
Like he's like, we got to keep going. Just because we won a national championship doesn't. I mean, and Bill Belichick says the same thing when they won a Super Bowl. He's like, yeah, we just lost a month of looking at guys to draft,
Yep.
and it's crazy that people like that with championship mentality, that process, the system, whatever you want to call it, it's like it never stops,
Yeah.
and you just keep adapting to it.
It's a beautiful thing. I know, like, it sounds crazy, but I think it's a beautiful thing when you have coaches of that caliber who can win so much, but at the same time focus on how much they've lost.
Hmm.
I don't know. I try to I try not to be super over the top critical because I can get really terribly bad on myself, as most coaches do. I mean, not even
Hmm.
probably do. They do. But I just think that's such a healthy way to think of things when you understand your system, not just your offensive system, but your system of football, right? Um, I don't know. I think I just think in that thinking for me, because I do a lot of music as well, so with my church and and have for years. So for as a musician, I think just that structured thinking for me just is very natural. And then the marketing side of me just thinks in structure and cycles and growth patterns and all of those things. And so it carries over to football a lot. But I think it's healthy to just understand that a win is a win, but at the same time, it's the beginning of the next game, right? Or the win, the doing great of a good play is just the signal of the next play, and when the whistle blows, it's the prep for the next game, right? It's all of those things. It's always a cycle. And I think those that become good to great embrace that better than others, because if you don't embrace it, I think it becomes so abrasive, so conflicting, right? Like friction, that it becomes uncomfortable, that you either grow disgusted or tired, or you get to a point where you have to look for external refreshing, right? You can't just have that passion within you that just bubbles you up and drives you. You have to look for these external gratifications and things, and pick me ups and all of that stuff. So I don't know. I think finding that is a really healthy place for coaches, um, at any level, really.
Yeah, and then a lot of younger coaches think they know. I was one of those guys. Like I know this or that, I can go do it, and it didn't click to becoming an offensive coordinator. I was a handcuffed offensive coordinator. Don't get me wrong. I didn't really get to do what I wanted, But even then, for that aspect, like I don't know exactly what we're doing, and then I don't, and like me personally, I was like, oh, I'm not ready to run a program yet. Like just thinking about it, like I wouldn't know how to do A through Z. I know how to do A through F, but I don't know the rest. And but now that was when I was 24, 25. Now I just turned. It's like now I think I know. It's been 6 years. Um, I like to think I know now because I'm a little older. And so part of the podcast that he was doing was giving back to young coaches. Like I have one that's like, so you want to be a coach? Well, let me tell you what happens. And I'm not a head coach, but I've gone through the bad and the good. I've done the bad and done the good.
Yeah.
I was the kid guy that's like, I know everything. And then when you don't get it, you're a brat. I was a brat about it until it clicked one day. And I was like, I know nothing. And guess what? I'm going to be a fly on the wall. And that's why I wish I can go back to I started when I was 18 coaching, like right away. I want to smack myself upside the head and be like, you know nothing. Like, go learn. Don't keep your mouth shut. And so some of the stuff that you're saying, or like I've learned, I wish I knew. And younger coaches need to hear that stuff because they think they know.
Mhm.
I've coached with
Funny,
like young coaches think they know. I've gone through it.
yeah. The funniest interaction that I've ever had on Twitter. I have no idea who the coach was. It was a young guy, and he posted, and it was in my feed, and I seen a lot of people had replied to it. So I was reading, and he asked a question like, I want to get into high school football coaching as, an assistant coach. Um, and he was asking like, what should my top priorities be? What systems should I learn? What, and all these things. And it was a pretty good sized post that, for that Twitter will allow, but, and he just went on, and I left one comment and it got a ton of likes, but I said, be prepared to do a lot of laundry. It's the only thing I said, because if you're going to the high school level, and you're coming in as the green guy that's never coached, never played college ball, you played high school ball, and all that stuff. You don't. A lot of young coaches need to learn. You do not prove yourself on the chalkboard. Head coaches will work with you on that X's and O's thing, and you can learn and do the podcasts and all that stuff on your own time. But listen to me, as someone who is in their 40s now, I'm telling you, be a doer, period. That will get you more loyalty from a staff than anything. Is just be that guy who does what's asked of him, period. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be laundry. So that's my little shout out to the fresh green guys that are, wanting to get into the game and are looking for all this inspiration. It's going to be dirty, sweaty pants and jerseys for a while, and that's all of us have done it. But that's that, and I know like it's in there's big programs that are 6A and all that stuff, and they've got a lot of staff. But I'm talking, if you're green and you're going in, you're probably not going to start out there. You're going to start out at the 1A, 2A, 3A maybe ish schools, where the staff is a lot smaller, the facilities are a lot smaller, budgets are a lot smaller, and everyone wears a lot of hats. So just be prepared.
One, I love that movie, Pain and Gain. That Be a Doer. Love that
Yeah.
movie. Um, or if you're, and I said this in my little show podcast I did. If it is a big time school, you're not going to be paid. You're going to be a volunteer. You got to start out volunteering. Number one. Number two. Now, see, I was babied. I went to my high school and started coaching. My head coach brought me up to varsity underneath his wing. I helped him out. But back then, you traded film. You had to drive and trade film. So what did I do? You drove and traded film.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve, we have a far away game. Can you go scout this other team? Take this notebook and write down what they do.
Mm-hmm.
I was varsity, but I was doing that stuff, and I was going to school, so I lived like 40 minutes away, so I was having to go back and forth. So I wasn't full-time volunteer. But then what happened was I was there for a couple years. I went to the next school, and I thought I knew. I was like, I need to be varsity this, varsity that, and I kind of was. He goes, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, offense, offensive line, and offense. That's what I love. He goes, all right. Next day, he goes, you're JV defensive coordinator. You're going to learn. You help out the varsity defensive coach, and you're coaching defense. And I was a brat. I was like, what are you talking about? JV this? I want to be full varsity offense. And then he's like, and then you're going to be a guy looking at the iPad telling us what's going on. You're not really coaching. You're just kind of telling them what happened. And so I was kind of a brat. But I remember trading film. I remember scouting. I remember we didn't wash the clothes, but I guess who had to collect them? We
Mhm.
did. They threw them on the floor. You had to pick them up. You had to clean the field up. You had to dress the field. You had to do this. And they think they're going to walk in and get paid. They're like, I need a paid spot. You're going to volunteer right away.
Yep.
Unless you're a teacher and you graduate and you are lucky enough to find one just because you're a teacher.
Yeah.
But even then, like you said, if you're trying to go to a state title winning program, there's a reason why they're winning state titles
Yep.
and those coaches are there for a while. You're going to go to a smaller school that has turnover because they're moving up.
Mhm.
You're going to pay 2,000. If you do get a stipend, it's like $1,000 or $2,000 because the school is small.
Yep.
You're going to coach 5 positions. You're going to coach the freshman and the JV.
Yep.
And I've been at 5 high schools, so I've gone through small high schools. Every school I've gone to has been, like, bigger. And so I kind of how do I put this? I wanna give back to younger coaches. I'm a young coach too, I know that, but, like, the 20-year-old coaches need to hear that. And, like, they don't realize it. They think they know everything. "Oh, I played high school ball." And I was like, "Shut up. I was in your shoes. Shut up. You don't know. You know nothing."
Yeah. Uh, Unfortunately, that's the truth.
It is. That was rough. There's a young coach that listen, that was rough, but you kinda need it.
Yeah.
You kinda
So,
needed it. Yeah, there's that's 4 rabbit holes. That's fine. It's
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so how did you end up coaching at a school in another state? Because I said that earlier. It's very interesting. Like, how does that happen? I don't know if I could coach in Indiana, like drive over to Indiana. I
S-
wish I would
Um,
have this year, but not. I don't know if I could do that normally.
so I played high school, played college, did all the arena and Europe stuff, and I when I got done, I coached um at one of the colleges I played at as quarterbacks coach. Like it was student assistant, right? Because I was wrapping up some stuff. So I did student assistant and came back to Tennessee, where I'm from, and started coaching at a private school. And that's the time that I met the head coach I'm with now. It was in that same
Mhm.
time frame. And um, we had known each other forever. And he went to Nice High School in Florida, where Tebow went, was there, and Blackville Hilda in South Carolina, somewhere else. I can't remember. Well, him and his wife moved back to our region, and he took the head coach job at that school. And I seen him posted on Facebook one day, and so I messaged him. I was like, "What's the staff look like?" And they had just had complete turnover, pretty much. And so, anyways, that's how I got into coaching in a state just across the state line and living here. And it's not really that exciting of a story, but it's just that I knew him for a while, and the school that he got hired in as a head coach was in a, I mean, it was bad. I can't, like, there's no sugarcoating. Um, the amount of money that was in the football balance, the football account balance was ridiculous. I mean, it 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 like It was very similar to like a college student's bank account. I mean, like it was bad. Field house was in terrible shape. Just a lot of stuff. I mean, they had the same uniforms, I think, for like 7 or 8 seasons. Just ridiculous. And we came in, we decided not to order new uniforms. We ordered new ones this year and made a big, huge turnaround, beat two teams in the county. There's 3 teams in the county that we're in because it's a very rural area. So uh, the 2 teams in the county, they had not beaten since the 80s, and we beat both of them last year. So that was, I mean, there was just a lot of big things that we did, set some records, I think, for different things, and um, just really did a lot with a group of kids that people had just kind of said there's nothing here and walked away on them. And we came in and um, taught them to believe in us, but most importantly, to believe in themselves. And then also trust the system, trust the system, trust the system. Keep repeating that over and over and over so that they understand that when something goes wrong, there's an answer for it. Right. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, all of that. But yeah, that's how, and it's a little, uh, it's not that far away. I know it's 40 minutes, but it's not a long, like some, everyone knows like like some 40-minute drives are like 3 hours. Some 40-minute drives are just 40 minutes. And it's an easy drive, through beautiful country in Southwest Virginia. So, um, I don't know how it's going to be this spring though, because when it snows in the Southwest Virginia area, it drops like buckets, and
Mhm.
you live in Illinois, so it snows obviously up there, but you take that depth of snow and throw it on mountainsides and curvy roads, it's just, yeah. So, but yeah, that's the story.
Yeah, that drive reminds me where I'm from. I'm from 1 lane or 2 lane country roads. And like you said, it's funny when you're down where I'm from. This is another rabbit hole, but it'll only take me like a minute. Where I'm from, and it's like, um, it's a 20-minute drive or it's 10 miles or whatever. That's how we talk.
Hmm.
Then up here, it's like, well, how far away is it? Oh, it's 20 minutes, but with traffic, it's an hour.
Yeah.
So they give you 2 times because in Chicagoland, it's a little different.
Hmm.
I went from 1 lane to 5 lanes, speed limit 60, they're doing 85, and you got to keep up. And I hate it so much.
One of the agencies I worked with, um, is in Los Angeles, and
Ooh,
so I learned that really quick. GPS will tell you, you know, like you can Google Maps it, and it says 10 miles. That's not. Even when I had to live in Nashville for a while, it's a much smaller metro, but still the same thing.
mhm.
Depending on what time of the day you're traveling, 40-minute drive could be 2 hours. So,
Yeah, because where I'm from, it's 10 miles. Well, you already know it's gonna be like, oh, that's like 13 minutes or whatever. You already kind of know, but there's no traffic. So you're like, oh, that's not gonna take me very long.
yeah.
Like you said up here, if I look at the high school I coach at now, it might say, oh, it's 15 miles or something. And I'm like, oh, that's not too bad. But now I have to Google map everything up here because I don't know where anything is. Oh, it's 45 minutes if there's traffic.
Hmm.
If you leave at this time in the morning, you don't want to. You have to
Mm.
leave between this time and this time, and it ain't like the ones who I coached at a couple years ago, down and we both live towards where we live now, which is only like 18 minutes. If there's no traffic, it's 18 minutes straight. If you leave, like we had weightlifting, they got to school at 2 o'clock or 2:30. They lifted till about 3:30 because if you don't leave before 4, you're gonna find it. You'll find that traffic. It was
Mhm.
real funny. If you don't leave before 4, you'll find it. during the football season, you had to leave at 6:30 to make sure there was no traffic, like 6:30 or 7.
Yeah.
So it was just real funny. This head coach has been there for a while. He's like had it mapped out for me. So when I moved out here, he was like, "Oh, you live by me. Let me tell you, like leave at this time, or we had to leave before this time. If not, we're going to sit here and talk because we're not going to sit in that traffic. That 18-minute drive is going to be 40 minutes."
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, I like the area that I moved back to where I'm from, the Tri-Cities area, is like northeast of Knoxville. So
okay,
like when the state, like when Tennessee comes over and it's got like the point, right? That whole triangle there at the top, that's the Tri-Cities. So Bristol Motor Speedway, all of that good
okay, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's beautiful country, beautiful, beautiful land, beautiful everything. You're minutes away from Virginia, you're minutes away from North Carolina. So you can drive into the coal mine mountains that are really, really pretty, or you can drive across the state line to North Carolina and, you're like Cherokee National Forest and all that good stuff. So it's just really beautiful in every direction.
I think I've been to Cherokee. We went there on vacation. Um, and then we drove through the Smoky Mountains and all that many times. We've been all through Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina. We've been as a kid. So I'm picking up what you're putting down. I can
Yeah.
kind of remember what you're
Yeah.
um
Trying to paint visuals for the listeners.
I do need visuals. I need visuals and description. I'm that person. You can tell me all you want and I'm like, "Oh, I understand. Can you
Yeah.
put it on a board for me or paint me a
Yeah.
picture?" Uh
Our
or like
head.
I'm not the guy that says, "Hey, go west." I'm like, "No, can you tell me a street name like that I
Yeah.
could see it?"
Yeah.
I'm that
Our,
guy.
the head coach, Chris, he's like that. I will text him, sometimes 10:30 and be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about what if we blah 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 blah." And he's like, "Yeah, just draw it up." So yeah, so he's that guy.
Well, I'm just glad that I can talk about it too. But then, like, after the conversation, I may have to go draw it up just to kind of remember. But, like, but that's the experience of coaching. Like, I figured out how to listen and hear it and know. When I was younger, you could tell me, I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what you're talking about. Now that I'm older and I've researched and read, I'm like, oh, okay. But then sometimes I've had coaches on already, like, hold on a second. I had Coach Justin Clark from North Carolina, or whatever. He was talking about the run and shoot.
Yeah.
He was talking to me. There's times if I have the video, I'm looking down because I'm like, hold on a second. I'm trying to think in my head, especially the run and shoot, especially that. I'm like, well, hold on a second. Because my memory, I don't know enough about it. So he's telling me, and I'm like, hold on a second. Let me figure it out.
Yeah. Run and shoot, I don't know very well.
And I asked him that. I'm putting that episode out tomorrow. But he said, like, I asked him, I said, why is there hardly anything? And he told me, he's like, people hated on it for a long time. So the people that knew it didn't release anything, didn't tell anybody. Like air raid stuff, Mummy told people, Mike Leach told people, it's just gone through. Wing T stuff has gone through. Spread option. He's like, run and shoot. It was hated on so much. The June Joneses or whatever of the world just kind of said, screw it. We're not going to write it down.
Yeah.
Like he needs a special. I asked him, I said, do you need like a special membership card to know the run and shoot? My wallet.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I know anything is because I really have to research it, and that's where I got frustrated. I told him I got frustrated. It's on the podcast. Like I got frustrated researching it. Like I can go to Google right now and type air raid, and something's gonna pop up or wing T. You type up run and shoot, you
Yeah.
have to really dig through the deep webs of Google to find it. Or like Coach Mackey's gotten people on there to talk about it. I have to go look at that. You have to go do this. But one thing you can't find is pass protection. They will not tell you anything.
Yeah. I know choice and go, um, and that's about it.
Yeah, he
And
was telling me
the
some
only
things, and
reason I know those, Coach Mackey.
yeah, because he was telling me he said some things, and then he had to tell me because they have different words for things. So like what they might call one thing, we call another, like everybody else in the world.
Yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, we have our own special language, even their formations. Like, I don't think he
Mm.
calls it trips, he'll call it something else. But the thing about Coach Clark, and I'm gonna get him back on again, he's like, I'll tell you everything that I'm allowed to. But what he can tell would be a lot. Like he could tell a lot. And like he told you how you drill choice. He told me how you do this. So like he was telling you, and um, but I was like, ooh. And then I asked him, I said, do you think people don't run it because they don't know it or because it's too hard? And he said, yes, both.
Yeah.
You can't find it, and it is difficult. It is, I think coaches, because I told him for me personally, I stopped researching it because I couldn't find it. And then I'm looking at it and I was younger and I was like, I don't want to teach choice. I don't want to teach this, or that. And then I discovered air raid concepts. Like, this is so much easier than,
Yep.
run and shoot. But a misconception is, and it's funny, they run the ball a lot. He's like, we run the ball a ton. He goes, it's in the name, run and shoot. I was like, I know you do run the ball a lot. People don't think that though.
Yeah.
They think the passing.
Yeah. Because original run and shoot was split back, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was split back,
Yeah.
under center, a lot of bunch formations, and
Hmm.
uh, they had some tight ends here and there. And that was like the air raid too. That's kind of where air raid kind of took stuff from West Coast and run and shoot. They were split back, and they just kind of, people need it. That's the other thing people don't know. Go read, Stretch the Cornfield, The Perfect Pass, and Mike Leach's book. Like they tell you straight up, like, yeah, we looked at BYU, we looked at the run and shoot, we looked at all the West Coast stuff. We looked at wing T and their rocket tosses and stuff and just made it a key screen.
Yep.
Like they just evolved it. But
I
people
think,
don't want to, the Twitter
yeah.
wars, they don't want to hear that. The Twitter wars, they don't want to hear that.
Yeah. I posted on Twitter not too long ago. Uh Somebody had made the comment about the feud between air raid and wing T coaches. And for somebody like me, I think wing raid, I think is ludicrous. If you can't look at both of those systems and see that they philosophically are the same exact thing, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Both systems are if then. We count the box, they count the coverage. I'm wing raid, I combine both. So I do both. One thing that I like about Colt Harp, Coach Colt Harp, I
Mhm.
think is how you pronounce his name. He has that 53.3 offense
Yeah.
thing that he talks about. I think that the air raid does that, but I think that if you have a really good gun wing T with twins or trips, right? It's like it just depends on how you line it up. But if you have that tight end and a wing with twins opposite, or a tight end and a wing with a flanker outside to create trips, and you can run all of your belly, all of your buck, the trap, if you can hit quick enough, and still have the threat of twins and trips, you truly have that 53.3. And so for me, that it was a no-brainer when I had to kind of say, like, who am I? What am I doing as a coach? I evolved into that whole wing raid mindset and kind of just said, if I can teach if then to my kids with wing T, then we can throw the ball on shallows and quick stuff and have them understand the same if then statements, and it doesn't change anything philosophically for us. It's all the same, then we're good. And that's what I've done.
Yeah, we keep going down rabbit holes. I'm gonna get to that. I was gonna ask you, I'm very curious, but keep going down rabbit holes. But oh, I was gonna say something. See, this is what happens. I don't know. Like, I think the argument now you're seeing, because I already one of So that I told you at the podcast, like I want to do ESPN stuff. Me and my two friends are kind of doing that now. We do like a college football recap. Now we're turning more towards we're Illini fans, so we're turning it towards like an Illinois show because basketball's back. Illinois is number 5 in the nation. We're really excited. One of the things my friend asked me, he doesn't coach. We played football together. He doesn't coach, and I love Mike Leach, and he knows it. And Mississippi State was struggling. He goes, "When is Mike Leach going to realize he needs to run the ball?" And I said, "Well, hold on a second. Mike Leach ain't going to run the ball. That's not who he is. He's going to throw the ball." So I think the arguments you're seeing this argument more now of like, "Hey, look, they're struggling." You see other air raid coaches are starting to run the ball more. They're getting into the RPO stuff like Lincoln Riley and Holgerson, and Coach Salas worked with Hal Mummy and Mike Leach, and I talked to him. He said, "Yeah, they might be mad at me. I do a lot of GT counter, but it's beautiful, but they still throw it a lot." But he's like, "We'll still run it." So I think the argument when it's coming up more is because Mike Leach is not winning, I think.
Yeah.
But you weren't hearing that a lot when he was at Washington State and they started to win. You didn't really hear it. Now that he has a below 500 record, it's like, oh, he's not winning. He needs
Yeah.
to run the ball. And I'm like, I get it, but you know how much that's not the way he thinks.
Hmm.
So I think that's the argument is like, should you run the ball or just throw it the whole time? And because he's the only true pure air raid left. Because even Mummy has gone to like a air raid run and shoot type thing.
Yep.
He's the last true air raid, I think,
And
left.
isn't his son Matt's at Nevada, right? I
Yeah,
think.
and then yeah,
But even they're running, um, they're not like full on leech air raid.
yeah, they're not full on. Graham Harrell is at USC. He's not full on. They run a lot of inside zone and duo and stuff.
I think that
But
goes back though to the whole thing, the concept of the system, that systematic approach, right? The system thinking is, you know, when do you adapt? And I
mhm,
think that it's a the problem is that sometimes, well, not sometimes, a lot of times, we live in that kick when you're down culture, right?
mhm,
Wait till you lose and then start to blame everything on what you're doing. For me, I was glad that he took the Mississippi State job because it got him out of the Pac-12 because I grew up an Oregon fan. My family's from the Northwest. So like for me, I grew up watching Pac-10 and Big Ten football because with my family's from Michigan and from the Northwest. So for me, I've always been an Oregon Ducks fan since a small child, and it pissed me off playing them because I knew there was going to be like 5 or 6 plays called the entire game, but it's just going to work because he had time to build. And again, I know it's the SEC and everybody can say whatever they want to. I don't care. You give him time to build. I think that this whole college football season has an asterisk beside it, anyways.
mhm.
Period. I mean, even whoever wins the Heisman, and all of these things, it's kind of like they earned it, but it's like, would it be the same if everyone had the same preparation, the same training camps, the same everything, all the stuff that would be normal leading up to a normal season? Nobody's had that. So that's why you see, I think, like Coastal Carolina just like just ripping,
Mhm.
and just teams that gelled. I think that's the thing. Like, it might not be that you're not that good, you just haven't gelled yet, right? So that whole player um, bond hasn't been built because there's a lot of trust that goes into football, and we know that as coaches. But again, I've said it and we'll say it 1,000 times. This whole college football season this year is a big giant asterisk, but no coach in the college ranks should be fired after this season, in my opinion, because there's been handcuffs and short leashes on everything to where it is what it is. Like, just be thankful that your state is playing, that your school is playing, that whatever alma mater you have is playing. Be happy with that. Enjoy it, because it could be that we had nothing, and then just move on from this season and see how normalcy returns heading into 21 season. And thank God we're only 31 days left in this dumpster fire of a year. So
And then it'll be round 2. Is what will
no,
happen.
stop. Don't put that on us. Don't.
Oh,
I'm gonna go ahead and just cancel that out in the airwaves of this podcast. Just, we're moving on. There's no round 2. We got to do something else.
I fell into that TikTok rabbit hole, and there was a funny one. It did that. It was like New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2020. And, it's like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then that voice from the old school video games, round 2, like for
Oh
Mortal
my.
Kombat. And so it's like, it hits midnight, it goes round 2. And then they look around. So every time someone says,
That
I'm like,
would
oh,
be.
round 2.
Oh God, no. I love TikTok though.
Yeah,
I never.
I fell down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, this is a rabbit hole I will go down. I never thought as a grown man that I would be a fan of TikTok, but that is the funniest. Like, there, I find the funniest. I laugh so much. That's the only social media that I actually enjoy. I don't really engage much on any of the social media that I'm on, but I will wear TikTok out because, so like me and the wife, we watch, when you have your For You page feed
Mhm.
pretty much worked out, um, it kind of curates what you want to see. So, like all of the married pranks, right, between the spouses,
Mhm.
those kind of that stuff, man, crack. Like, I swear, I never thought that I would be the guy that would be like, "Hey, TikTok's hilarious," but it is.
That happened in quarantine. Uh,
Yeah.
People told us, she started watching it, and then I secretly downloaded it and started watching. Then she caught me and was like, "Are you watching TikTok?" And I was like, "Oh, you caught me." I thought she was asleep. I'm out in the living room and she comes out, "Are you watching TikTok?" I was like, "Oh."
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
And so I was like, "Yep." So then, like before bed, besides reading a book, what happens? You're watching that before bed. You're not reading a book or nothing. You're just not even watching TV. You're just looking through
Yeah,
TikTok. And if you
I
don't
don't
do it,
know.
you're thrown off.
It's one of the last things. It kind of reminds me of the old Vines, but
Mhm.
it's just that last thing where it's just authentically real for the most part. And there's just so much funny stuff like genuinely makes me laugh. So I enjoy it because it's really hard, especially in 2020, to laugh. And so I wear it out, and I admit that in front of all you coaches. TikTok, it's my fave. Sorry.
Well, I think that's why um, it grew in the quarantine because you had nothing to do and we needed to laugh
Hmm.
because it was like, I think it's my fault. We left school March 13th. That was like the day they said go home. And I was like, this ain't gonna last well. It's April. This ain't gonna go on. Well, then they shut the state down, and we're like, well, now it's depressing, and
Yeah.
we need something. You can only watch so much Netflix. You can only watch so much of that. You need something else. Um, Coach Ronaldo or Rigardo, I think on Twitter. I hope I said his last name right. He makes his TikTok is hilarious
Oh
with
yeah,
coach.
like the stuff coaches say or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, it's hilarious.
Yes. Yeah, that's hilarious.
I almost had him on the podcast, but then I caught him right when he lives in Texas and they have their football season. So I caught him right when they started football, and I was like, "You can worry about that. Like, don't worry about because Texas football, it's a whole nother thing." I was like, "You
Oh
worry about that."
yeah. Yeah.
Like, and he's like the recruiting coordinator, so he has to get stuff ready for the kids to get recruited. And I'm like, "That's a high school, and you do that?" He goes, "Yeah, it's part of my
Yeah.
job." And I was like, "That's crazy."
Yeah.
Um, so I won't be doing my job if I didn't ask about the wing down here for a long time. I ain't even gotten the wing raid. So come up with a wing raid because it kind of conflicts with everything we just talked about on Twitter. People talk about wing tee and air raid.
Yeah.
You can't have both. because they're going to say air raid is soft. They're going to say the wing tee, 3 things happen when you throw the ball and 2 are
Mm.
bad. And so you can't have both. And then you talk to coaches about wing tee, you have to practice this, this, and this, and all your time has to go to that. Air raid is like you have to practice this, and you're taking away reps if you focus on the run more, if that makes sense. Like, so how are you able to incorporate both? That's very interesting to me.
I think that it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You have to start at that whole basic part, like the foundation has to be the same thought process for any of your passing RPO game and any of your running game. So like your whole thing has to be the same. If you say we're a running team and you don't care to throw the ball ever, you've eliminated your ability to beat probably 2 or 3 teams that you'll face. That if you could have just tossed the ball a little bit, just a little bit, just enough, you could have changed the course of the game. So I think that either it comes down to you have to lose that whole mentality of the fear of going into something. And I think that fear stems from we're afraid of what we don't know. Right. And that's where a lot of the uptightness that you find sometimes, I think, in the Twitterverse and other social media comes from. Like, if it comes up in topics and they don't know, they get really guarded. And the same thing, kids can read you like a book. So if you are not 100% confident in being able to establish both phases of the game, they're going to see it, they're going to know, and they're not going to trust you. And if you don't have trust, then you might as well just line up in the wishbone or the Maryland eye and just pray that it works and that everyone's smaller than you, because that's what it's going to take. For me, it was the evolution of, because I'm a system guy. So when I had my chance to finally be the offensive coordinator, I was like all over the place, right? I was like gun triple mixed with what I thought I was doing good with inside zone, but I really suck at inside zone. Like, I own that. I'm not an inside zone guy. I'm a gap guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, like I could coach it and we would be this and that. It's awful. Right. So I had to find myself. And when I needed answers, ultimately, and again, this is my biased opinion, everyone, the wing tee for me is the ultimate system, the true order of football for me personally. And when I got there, I didn't want to be under center. I wanted to be pistol. There wasn't really anybody doing it that I knew of at the time. The closest thing that I could find was back in the day, I got a hold of Coach Murphy from Capitol High School. And I don't know if you know who that is. He won probably 6 or 7 state championships up there. I mean, it was a ridiculous amount. And just absolutely, but he was a wing T guy, but he had done this thing where he moved to the tight end and a wing with offset back in the gun with twins. So I started taking some of that and evolving to pistol, and then I'm evolved to the gun, and then I started watching Oklahoma when Lincoln Riley, and just started thinking, God, like, why can't you take the shallow portions of that game, right, the air raid passing game, and mesh it? And so just slowly started moving those pieces until I got to where it was easy enough to put people in so much conflict and especially when you get into the trips set, or what I call ace, but it would be trips to most everyone else. It's tight end with a wing with the flanker out. And so yeah, it was just this evolution of trying to find a way to evolve as a coach, as a football person, into something that I knew I could lay out to the kids and say, if you believe in ABC, then the counters off of those DEF work, and then we can throw XYZ in on the trick play or the whatever stuff, the specialty, the whatever you want to call them, and then have this bag of things that's so simplified, right? That it just kind of, it looks so complicated, but it's so easy, so simple. And so for us, like we're a buck, belly, down, jet team, right? We run buck series, belly, down, which belly G, but yes, we call it down. I'm wing T, but I really, really dread some of my podcast because I'm going to have some of the purists on.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't do the numbering system, the old wing T numbering system, just because, you know, I was on Coach Banstra's podcast, and like the day after I was on his podcast talking about belly, he was on there talking about, and he was like laughing, talking about coaches who called the belly XB, the cross block, ISO, and I was calling it ISO. But I messaged him and I was like, sent a bunch of laughing emojis, and he was like, "What?" And I said, "I just heard you talk about, you think it's hilarious when people try to call it belly ISO." And so he was laughing. But I'm not a purist in the sense. I love wing T for what it is. I
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily love wing T for what it was, right? I know where it started, but I love it for what it is because it's a tool. It's a tool for me to build a foundation for these guys to understand that if you learn buck sweep, what we call belly ISO, so all of you guys watching, belly ISO, belly XP, down or belly G, jet, some rocket if we want to toss it in, but those four things, if you learn four plays, that's all we have, right? And then you have the complementary stuff off of it. But all four of those families look the same. And I
Mm-hmm.
start out by teaching that a household looks the same. The mom and the dad and the kids, they all share the same features, right? And so it's the same thing. And it was really just that. It was me evolving myself to be able to teach something systematically so that when I preached my gospel of, you know, goals and systems and rising to this and falling to this, making sure that my system had that catch, right? That kept us on the plane to reach where we wanted to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, Coach Banstra's thing comes from me. Probably it's probably from me because all of the podcasts on Coach Jeffers, we've done a lot of them, and me being the run game coordinator, we're shotgun. We're spread, but we're a spread run. The OC calls it ISO. I'm like, okay, I'm going to call it ISO, but I know traditionally it's belly, so because of the way it's blocked.
Right.
So some of that comes from me because I give him a hard time. Like, no, it's ISO, or like, no, Steve, it's belly. Like, so some of that comes from me because I gave him a hard time, and I'm like, no, it's ISO. We're spread. It's ISO. And
Yeah.
but you brought up a good point. Like, just because purists call it this or that, you can call it whatever you want as long as you know what it is and the kids know what it is. The assistant coaches know what it is. And that's where football gets complicated, I think. Not that it's a bad thing. Like, I can't forget, I was younger having conversations. they'll call something, one thing, I had no idea what they were talking about, but we probably ran the same thing. Put up the inside zone. If I drew up inside zone, it looks like duo just because I want double teams.
Mm-hmm.
But Coach Bancher was one of them. I drew up inside zone on his podcast or his interview, or whatever. Oh, that's duo or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm not blocking the end. Yeah, but the blocking, the way it looks, it's duo. I'm like, the team I was on taught me this was their inside zone because we did not have the athletic lineman to take a step to the right and go up the field. Like we just didn't.
Yeah.
Because I said I was an offensive lineman. It sucks to block a linebacker by yourself. To get up there and do it, it sucks. And so the school I was at, we realized, why can't we just double team? If we get 4 yards out of it, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
I know inside zone's supposed to be this big play, and eventually it's going to be. People don't realize that it's always the cutback. It's not always the hit. It's always like they aim for the center, and then if there's this hole to the left, they just bang it back.
Yeah, the bend, bang, bounce.
And so we just figured double teams worked. Just don't block the end because we had a running quarterback too. So like, don't block the end. It's still zone. We're still teaching zone concepts. When you're double team, it's still a zone. Like if this guy shows up, you got to get him. And if there's nobody on you, but someone blitzes, you got to get him. So it's still zone concepts. And then we're stealing reps for power. And people are like, what do you mean? We're double teaming. So when you run power right or whatever people call it, 44 or power right, you're double teaming. So on inside zone, you're still stealing reps.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it's zone, 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 and then you call power, the lineman besides the guy pulling is like, oh, I go here. It's the same thing. But I'm stupid simple. What do I know? I don't know.
Yeah.
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
When I tried my hand at zone schemes, that's the way I did it, was all doubles and try to get the movement. And if you could create a lane, I was just really, all I did was tried to influence and leave the cutback. That's all I did. And then I realized, yeah, I'm not that good of a coach with zone. I own it. So yeah, I'm straight up gap.
Well, when I was handicuffed OC, it had to be, we had like 6 run plays. Yeah, that's tough. And then inside zone had to be step to the right or left and go up. And at the time, I was like, I didn't like inside zone because of that. Then I went to the next school, and there was one of their bread and butters. This is how they did it, just because they didn't have the lineman. And then it kind of just clicked of like, oh, and then I learned how to do it. And then the next school I popped to, I kind of brought that with. They kept stepping to the right or the left. I kind of brought that double team thing, and it worked. And then we were able to, I think Ohio State stole this from us. I'm always going to say they stole it. Ohio State runs this a lot. If they run like inside zone, well, we called it 8. So left tackle to the right guard are blocking inside zone left. The right guard is releasing out. And so now the quarterback is reading that the end still. He can hand off to the running back to follow the tackle and follow the 2 receivers that are blocking. Or if that guy goes with the right tackle, the quarterback keeps and runs behind that inside zone. And we were doing it at the school I was at. We had talked about it. I'd never seen it before. So we were doing it. And then like the next year I saw Ohio State doing it. And I was like, see, they stole it. You see that?
Yeah.
And then to influence the linebackers, because we could never block. There was always one guy we couldn't get off of that. So to influence that backer, you put the running back on the other side and you motion a guy. Now they're looking at him. The running back's an extra blocker and they're following the motion guy. So you're getting that backer to move. And so that's why we were big inside zone and big power. And that was it. And trap. We ran trap like 8 times in a row one time.
Yeah.
Those were our 3 right there.
Trap 8 times in a row sounds like my kind of game.
Well, the head coach is like me. We're both simple. He ain't stupid. I don't work for him anymore, but I'll never call him stupid simple. He was just frustrated with something. So he's like, I'm calling trap. Called trap. We got 8 yards. He called it again. We got like 6. And it was just, I kept looking at him like, if you call something else, we're going to smack you. And so we called it boom, 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 like 2 times right, 1 time left, blah, blah. And we scored. Our guards were so tired. They come over like, don't ever do that again. And I was like, you guys are soft. Back in the day, we would have loved to do that every time.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
they would hate to be at Castlewood. We ran buck sweep because we met. So this past year we weren't full like wing raid. We were pretty much what we called single wing T.
mhm,
It was a blend of my stuff and Chris's unbalanced single wing, and we met because we got there with 4 weeks before we played.
okay.
And so we
Yep.
took like we started and then we added throughout the year, but we ran our linemen. Oh my God. Like it was ridiculous because we told them, hey, listen, buck sweep out of the wing T stuff and the single wing stuff is going to be big for us. Like that's where we're going to hang our hat. That's our identity. And yeah, there's there's games. That one game that we played probably ran buck sweep 20 times. Yeah. At least 20 times. But
I'm
they
tired
just,
just thinking about it.
yeah, there was it's one of those games where their adjustments weren't there, and when they did adjust, I ran down. So
Hmm.
like we would just kick out and then just suck everybody in, wall off, and then go. And so it was enjoyable for me. They were tired, but they were prepped. So
Well, it's kind of like you guys are gonna keep doing this till I'm tired. And I'm standing over here. I ain't tired yet.
yeah, that's the one thing that I do dread about this spring. They've been really good lifting and they've transformed themselves. Um, I just don't know how the cardio part of it's gonna play out because we're probably gonna have to do a lot of running in the gym. Uh, we'll be practicing outside in February, but you know, I don't know. That's one of those not that's a rabbit hole I don't want to go down.
Well,
I
we
don't.
said the same. We said
Yeah,
the same thing. Like injuries is the big thing. They can lift all they want and do whatever, but
it can be
that's why we
cold.
did a lot of body weight stuff. We're so worried about injuries and it's gonna be cold. And one thing we did in contact days, which I don't know if a lot of coaches thought about this, our head coach, he was the defensive coordinator. It's first year being the head coach. So I always laugh at him. Are you glad you took this job? And he just said words he just doesn't want to repeat. And he took the job like 2 weeks or so before this all went to hell. So like at the end of February. So it was like right then he took the job. But who knew? We didn't know.
Yeah,
Um, we practiced a lot of special teams because we thought about it. And he was like, snow. And in Chicagoland area with the wind, he's like, we got to do that now because then we have an indoor facility, like an indoor track, but we got to share. But there's going to be times when we get to go inside. You can't really punt in there and all that stuff. And so he's like, we got to practice it now, figure it out now. And I told some coaches up here, they're like, oh my goodness, we they put all their emphasis on special teams. And so I'm like, special teams gonna make a comeback. Like this is gonna be the time where it's huge. And then me being the run game coordinator, he was like, it's snow. We're gonna run the ball a lot more, Steve. So this is all on you. And I was like, great, perfect. Thanks a lot. It's gonna be a disaster.
now
Well,
you've got me thinking about special teams.
yeah, because we thought it like
I'm
it's one
gonna
thing to do
take
in the snow, but with the
Chris.
wind, texting the head coach like, hold on, we gotta do special teams.
Yeah. Oh my God. I
Yeah,
just
I'm so glad he thought of it because I didn't. He called me one day before it and he was like, I'm the new guy too, like, but I've been coaching for 12 years, which is more than some of the other coaches there have. And Steve, what do you think about this? And he told me, I was like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. I'm more worried about the run game. I'm more worried about installing the offense. We got to start every practice special teams and focus a lot of it on that because kicking a frozen ball is going to suck. Snapping it's going to suck. The wind up here in the suburbs, it's I'll put you this way, in Central Illinois, I never wore pants coaching, ever.
yeah.
Up here in the Chicagoland area, they're on week 4. Like, So the first team I coached up here, we went 10-1. We ended up going 9-0. I think we were 4-0 or 5-0. It was 28 degrees outside, 30 degrees outside. Well, I'm superstitious. It was like something like that. I'm superstitious. I've been in shorts the whole time. So I was like, I have to wear shorts. I'm out there in shorts in 30-degree weather and the wind, and I come home, I can't feel my legs, I can't feel my feet. So the next week, it's like the same weather, and I was like, I have to wear pants. It's gonna have to happen. We're only winning by like 3 at halftime, and I'm like, it's gonna happen. We're gonna lose. We're gonna lose. I'm not wearing shorts. Thank God we come back and won by like 28 or something. Thank God. But
See, that's when you got to keep the superstition alive and just wear the same underwear.
luckily, I started growing out the beard, and I still had
Oh,
the beard.
okay, yeah,
I had the same beard and same hat, so I was like, okay, we're good. It's whatever.
covered. Yeah,
And the same shoes too. So I had still other things,
yeah,
and I
that
was
worked.
like, so it was. I toyed with it. We're only winning by. We averaged. I think we averaged like 47 points a game or something. So when we're only up by 3, I was like, oh, it's gonna happen. We just weren't playing well. I was like, it's gonna happen. It's because I'm not wearing shorts. And then I think it caught back up, and then we got back on track. And I was like, oh,
Yeah, I think every coach is superstitious in that way. Like there's little things that you do. I don't care how much any of you listening at all would ever deny it. There's things that you do with the thought of I'm repeating the process that like my game day thing, and you do it not thinking about it. Like for me, I carry one of two coins into the box with me that I just flip a lot, and I flip. One of them is like it's a big medallion. It's an Oregon Ducks medallion that I bought at a country club when we were doing it was like a golf outing for a lot of local businesses. And I either have that or it's a coin from um overseas, and I will just keep it and flip it and whatever. But it's like the little things, like I try to wear the same socks. I try to do like I won't untie my shoes. Like, it's ridiculous.
you got to
And
slip them back on.
it's so funny because if you think about like what you said, you were down by 3 and your only thought, like your initial thought was it's because I'm wearing pants. You don't like, and coaches are bad for that because we won't even register the fact that like we're struggling at this and this and this. Our first thought is like, I didn't, repeat whatever, or I didn't, in your um the yeah, superstitious. So it's funny.
Yeah, when I was OC, one of the guys I put in the box, he always had to have the big mints, and he'd eat them every freaking game. He had a big bag. If you asked for him, if he had to open them before he got to the press box, he wouldn't do it. You have to ask him at halftime. They're already open. Then you could have some. And I'm like, okay, that's a little extreme. Then the pants thing happened to me, and I was like, all right, it's not extreme no more. I understand. I get what's going on. But
Art.
like, but like the other coaches I worked with that year, the first game they went. They got this a barbecue place the first game. So we went 1-0. Guess where they went the next Friday? They went back to that restaurant. We were 9-0. So they ate there 9 weeks straight. And then when we won the playoff game, guess where we were the next week? They had to go. Our next playoff game was on a Saturday, but that Friday they still went. They're like, we have to go. Even if we're not playing, we're going.
Yeah.
So that Friday, by God, they were in that Mission Barbecue is what it's called. By God, they were there.
Yeah.
And they had ordered the same thing every time. And I'm like, aren't you guys tired
Exactly.
of that?
No.
Because I worked in a different school, so I got out later, so I could never go. And so the one time, I think it was one of those games I could go. I got out of school early. I'm like, Steve, why don't you come over here? And I was like, nope, it's going to ruin it. If I go there, this bad juju is going to show up.
Yeah.
And my mistake was I got Subway. It was the first game I was driving by. I just grabbed Subway. It was an away game. By God, I eat Subway like every Friday. And I didn't eat Subway for like another year after that. I was like, that's enough. Can't do it.
Yeah. It's hilarious the lengths we'll go to in our superstitious side of like trying to repeat a victory. It's so funny.
Yeah, and it's funny you said that because looking back, that's what I said. I looked at a coach. I was like, "I'm wearing pants, and that's why we're only winning by 3 or whatever." As we're walking to the locker room, and I hear the head coach was like, "Yeah, if we lose, it's because of you."
Yeah.
So it's funny. All of our mindset went to that, just because, not to be cocky, we knew we were going to come back and win because our team was we had just good team,
Yeah.
but we saved it for the locker. Once we went in the locker room, it flipped. But it's funny. That's like I said that, and like the head coach hearing it, he turned around, like, "Oh, I'm going to get in trouble." Yeah, if we lose, it's because you're wearing pants.
Hmm.
But that's just testament to him. He knew he's such a good guy, but he was just like he could turn it on and off. He was real funny, and then he could just flip a switch and be like the head coach.
Yeah.
Oh, we're crazy. And I told somebody that story like 2 weeks ago, maybe at school. Are all coaches superstitious? Like it's somebody that doesn't know sports. And I'm like, yes, yes, we are. And they laugh at it. They're like, that's funny. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. I could
But
have gotten fired over that.
what's crazy is that in no other place in my entire life, my career outside of coaching kids, nothing am I remotely that way. But on Fridays, it is a pattern. It has to be this thing, right? And all of us are wired that way. I don't care what any of them say. If they look long enough, they'll find something that they do.
Yeah. And I love seeing people's reaction that don't coach or anything like that. Their reaction to that is like, what? Like our head coach, like I think we made the playoffs is what it was. He was superstitious with his beard. He was growing a beard. But I think we finally made the playoffs for the first time since 1999. I think so we were 6-0. When we did that, he had this old 1999 hoodie on. Well, then he was like, I can't take this off. I have to wear it every Friday. We made the playoffs. So luckily we were in a place that was kind of cold. So every Friday he had that same hoodie on. So if it was cold, he'd put a jacket over it. He's like, I still have the hoodie on though. So I can put this jacket on over it.
That's funny.
So when we won our first playoff game since 1999, the reporter came and he told him in the report, he was like, my wife hates my beard. I look like Santa Claus, but we're 10-0. I have this hoodie on from 1999 I should throw away. I'm never gonna throw it away. And
Yeah.
I have the same visor on. He has like he's if he ever listens to this, he'll laugh. He's bald. He got no hair. But he had a visor on, so he's like, my head's cold. I can't put on a stocking hat because I had the visor on. So it's like it grew. Mine started right away. His kind of had to take time because
Oh God.
he had the beard, so he thought he was good. And then made the playoffs, and we kept going. And then just like he's like, I can't. Now I have to keep doing this. I have to keep doing that.
That's
And we had to
crazy.
keep the same uniform combos. Besides homecoming, that was the only time we changed it.
Yeah.
And we won by 60. So he thought we could change it, but he's like, nope, now we're going back to normal. That was homecoming. We go back to normal. And we wore white and red away. That's great. Now we got to wear all black at home. Like we got to be that.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I talked about the wing raid, and I go down another rabbit hole.
It's part of it.
So I've taken a lot of your time. There was one thing I wanted to ask before we get off. I know you haven't drawn anything, and I apologize, but there was one thing that
We don't have to. I just
be prepared.
Yeah, just in case.
Um, how do you install like the run games from like a wing tee and like air raid concepts? Because I think again, going back to that argument, how much time air raid teams have to practice their pass plays to make it good. And then the wing tee stuff, how people have to practice it to make it good. So then how do you install that to make sure that everything gets a balance? And then I'll ask another question because I'm thinking of it. A lot of wing tee purists, I guess, they don't like the pistol. They think it's all better under center.
Mhm.
So what's your argument to that? Like it work I coached against a team that did the pistol stuff and it works, just that misdirection stuff just gets you. They were pure unbalanced pistol. And believe it or not, what beat us, we were a close game. What beat us was a play action pass of all things that beat us. And they
Mhm.
ran the Statue of Liberty on us. That was the first time it ever happened. I was helping out on defense. They ran the Statue of Liberty. I'd never seen it in person because they're doing so much misdirection. It worked. So I guess I just asked you two questions. Like, what do you say to people about the pistol purists? And you'll probably get that on your podcast when it happens.
Oh yeah, it'll
And
happen.
then like how do you install the Buck series? Make sure you get all those run plays in, but on top of that, make sure they still get practice with mesh or shallow or Y cross stick and all that good stuff, which is stuff I love.
Well, I'll start with the air raid and wing T run. So we're going to be run first.
Okay.
So, I mean, right off the bat, if I'm full wing raid in a school, we're a run first team. We're going to run the ball. If you're going to give us just based on formations, you're going to give us something that I can pick on. You know, I'm gonna try to find your third best linebacker. I'm gonna try to find the weaker D end. I'm gonna try to find the corner who is dressed to the nines but doesn't like to tackle. Right? Same thing we always do. All of us do it. But in saying that, as far as air raid goes, I have mesh in there, but I don't teach it as intricate, right? For me, I just want like my tight end, my Y, to run his mesh at the face of the opposite linebacker. I need him to cross his face, right? And it's all. And then whether it's a wing or whoever that's coming underneath is chasing the feet of the D line. So like for me, I don't need to get as intricate into the details of it because we're going to run it, but we're running it behind a run game that's fast, deceptive, and your kids are already focused on the meat and potatoes that you've preached all week.
Mm-hmm.
If I can take snag or a shallow or a flood or any of those core, because I don't really go into um well, I call it drive, but it's pretty much um like drag dig post. It's um I can't remember what the term is for it in the purest air raid, but anyways, it's kind of like I've always known it as drive, but I've heard some other guys call it different things. But where I want like if we're in the tight end and wing set with a flanker to the same side, I want the tight end running 10-yard dig, wing running the shallow with a flanker on the post. So, and then we're just going to fake our buck sweep. So to the linebackers, the release and the drag, the shallow, to them, it's down block. That's what they see. They
Mm-hmm.
see the steps down block. They see the back crossing the quarterback. They have been taught and triggered all week. If you see this, it's buck sweep, fire downhill, get you your gap, blah, 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 blow it up, create penetration, try to do this, blah, blah, make them run around it. All the things that the defense coordinator is saying all week. That's all I need. I don't need to be 50-50. I don't need to be perfect air raid and perfect wing T. I just need to be good enough at one to complement the other. And
Gotcha.
that's the thing. So for installing, it's run first, it's wing T first, and then everything else. Because once they're so beat down from installing the run hardcore principles of everything that we do, the air raid stuff becomes fun. And so it's a reward of the base. It's the sweet to the bitter, the soft to the heavy, all that, whatever comparisons that you want to do. But that's my thought process in trying to get them to that place. As far as the whole argument of pistol wing T, my quarterback, when we go into pistol, his toes are at 3 and the fullback is at his toes are at 5. So whether I'm in pistol or I'm under center, there's no difference at the depth of the dive back. It's the same. Now, some people under center will put the fullback's toes at 4 if they want to hit it super fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not going to split hairs over maybe a half second difference.
Right.
You know, you can say that it hits faster, but I would rather have my quarterback backed off at 3 yards. And again, we're talking 3 yards from the ball, not 3 yards from the center, 3 yards from the ball. So the dive back is 5 yards from the spot of the ball, toes. And when that ball snapped, he's downhill. It's the same as if so we're just catching, and as we catch, it's the same thing as teaching your quarterback, right, to get off the midline from under center as he's taking the snap, right? So as
Mm-hmm.
we're catching the snap, and sorry to put my hands up to the camera, but as we're catching the snap, still the same. We're receiving and still making the same. You're just teaching the footwork backwards. So instead of stepping back off the midline, we're stepping to the line of scrimmage off the midline. And then you get that natural bend on the trap, or we're faking and he's filling in for backer because a lot of guys will let the fullback feel for the backside guard on buck sweep. I would never do that because for me, if I'm running trap, where does the center block? He blocks back.
Mm-hmm.
So I want trap and buck to look the same. So if the backside linebacker, right, to our weak side, not the tight end side, but to the weak side, if he sees the center block back and dive coming at him, he thinks what? Trap. He's been taught if the center goes and you see the guard pull, get downhill now because it's trap. It's the hardest hitting, deadliest play. You know, buck sweep is the baby of, you know, the wing tee, but trap is that sledgehammer, right?
Right.
That and belly ISO, you know, but I want to create the same. So I always have the center block back. And that way I can get him to trigger. And if I get him to trigger, then if I can get him to do the same movements and trigger when we're in the gun on buck sweep and he's trying to scrape to the A or to the strong side A to beat the pulling guard and to blow it up in the backfield, that's where the RPO game comes in. And, you know, so I run a sit route, the snag right there to sit where he's replacing, and then it becomes like an 8-yard pass. And then as soon as he catches it, turns it up. And I teach that RPO catch. I teach them the same thing, that to treat it like basketball. Just
Mm-hmm.
catch it, take it to the hoop. So like if you're going to post up and you're taking that underneath
Mm-hmm.
step to go to the basket, it's the same thing. Catch the ball, take your post step, turn, and then work it upfield.
I was getting ready to say, like, is your snag the same as corner in air raid terms?
Yeah.
Like, where
Yeah.
because I first learned it as snag. Coach Dearman at Kansas, he ran Auburn stuff. Because a lot of stuff you're doing sounds like Auburn stuff. They call it snag. And then you look at air raid, it's the guy runs a corner, but he runs that sit
Yeah.
route. They call it corner, but it's a snag. Like,
I think, and I don't know, Coach Mackey could correct me. I'm going to have him on my podcast to compare. We're going to go at it with wing T and air raid if thens, right? But air raid will run snag when they want to throw it on the inside outside. So if they want to throw the snag route versus the arrow, so if they want to read the underneath defender, they'll call Y corner if they want to read the corner of whether he stays on the snag or drops with the corner route. So depending on whether you want to run Y corner against the cover 2 look, like a 2 shell, or you want to run actual snag against the cover 3 shell, because now you're invert that flat player, force, or not force, but alley player guy that's out there apexed on twins is now the flat player. So you want to get the read of whether he goes with the arrow or stays where he's at with the snag route. So you get more of the inside outside read.
And then they like to set up that with stick. That's kind of where they go with, was like, I think stick sets up corner. They run stick first. They still have to shoot the arrow, then the stick, and then that outside release. They see how they play it, and then they're able to be like, okay, now we're going to run corner or snag, but they call it corner. It's just setting up that flat defender of where he's going and where they're dropping. And then Mike Lee. Oh, go ahead.
I teach the stick and snag at the same time, and I call them twin sisters because they're both beautiful, right? So they're triangle passing concepts, right? So you have your inside, your outside, your deep. It's just who's going where, and that's it. That's the only thing that changes. And so I teach them, if you know stick, you know snag. If you know snag, you know stick. So that's it.
And then they get crazy after that. Well, like Mike Leach, he calls it stick, but it's like an option. So like when that guy's running, if that guy's sitting inside, he doesn't churn in. He like runs to him and then goes out, like almost like a whip route, but he like churns his hitch and then he goes out.
Yeah.
High school, it's hard to teach that. So they just teach a straight up stick. But he likes to tell them post up basketball. So when you churn back as your hitch, so people that don't know stick is hitch, people say that too, like, oh, it's a hitch route. No, it's a stick route. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
When you turn back to the ball, if that guy's here, well, in basketball, you don't go into him and like, give me the ball. You go over here to get the ball. Because I coach basketball too. It's like, it's over here. So Mike Leach is like, why don't you just run that way? Well, what if the guy's there? Well, he's got to pick two things. He's going to guard you or our running back that's running the arrow. So if there is a guy there, he's got to pick you or the running back. And if they're all down there, we've got a touchdown because nobody's watching the corner or the go route on stick. And then people are, and that's RPOs too. Like if you add a run game to that, but they're reading the same thing, like tell the linemen they're doing their thing, but you're reading the same reads as if it were a pass. But if something doesn't look right, you just hand the ball off.
Yep.
Like if you just can't picture it, like when in doubt, hand it off and they go.
And that's the one thing that I have been talking to the kid that's going to play quarterback for us in the spring. When we first started evolving to some RPO looks this year, is telling him to trust me that if I call an RPO, I am 1000% okay with you just handing the ball off. Otherwise, I would call a pass. Only throw it if you know it's going to be money. If you are confused at all, you have the free out of just handing the ball off and removing taking all of the blame from yourself. Like there's nothing that you're going to get fussed at for.
Right. And then when they come off the field, instead of yelling at them, you just say, okay, what did it look like? Like, what did you see? Like another thing, young coaches listening, don't yell at your quarterback. You need to ask them before you yell at them, which I had to learn. I have to say, what did you see? Because they have a better way. Again, I researched Mike Leach a lot. He puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback. He may call play, but that quarterback can check because he can see.
Yep.
And then some people say, well, he take that away from a quarterback. And I was like, if he does bad enough, he'll just put another guy in. Like he's just, he's so focused on that. And then when you research Coach Mummy, he's kind of let them check. But I think it was more of, you're going to run this. But that's why he incorporated the choice route in his air raid, because now he takes that full out. It's like, quarterback, you're not changing the play. You're just going to tell this one guy what to do. So like if you already know you need him to run a post, like just do this real quick, or like it has to be a curl in, you tap your shoulder or something.
Yeah.
And that's where it's adapted, and that's where people need to realize like it's all different and who's doing what and how they do it. Not to blame quarterback on Mike Leach's teams, but they have to realize he gives them a lot of freedom, and that's where it's this has to come through of why they're struggling. Like he calls a play, but he knows they see something that has to be checked. So with the RPO stuff, it's the same thing. When in doubt, hand it off. But if you can see it, it's got to be money. And then when they come off the field, like, okay, what did you see? What wasn't clear? And then get the whole sideline now and be like, okay, let's go over it. Young coaches listening, that's what you need to do.
Yeah. I will add to the young coach listening portion of that. Make it a rule for yourself moving forward to not yell at any player on game day. If you have not made practice so hard and so difficult that the game feels easy, then you need to reevaluate the way that you approach practice. Me and the head coach I'm with now, of course we're good friends, but philosophically we approach the game very similar. We really lay it on them heavy in practice. And when I say lay it on, like I will call practice in team period like a game and rush them and put them through all of the hard spots, and I mean just wear on them, and ask them questions in the middle of calling the play. And if they don't respond to me, like just doing everything that I can to force practice to be very extremely difficult, because they don't need any more pressure on Friday. What they need is someone who asks them why, and not like, why did you blah, 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 and just berate them. I'm talking about, just like you said, why did you do this? What did you see? Because what we have seen is coming from years of experience. It's coming from watching hours and hours and hours of film, lectures, clinics, all the crap, right? All the things that we do. That kid is just a kid, right? And even some of your best players that you're ever going to have on your team don't care about football 1/10 of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
There are some kids that are special and love it, and it's a passion. But even some of your better kids that you young coaches are ever going to be around, they're not. They really don't care. Like they'll play the game and do good for you, but they don't care. So when you approach them on game day, you have to be a fan. Like you got to be the biggest fan, because they already have enough pressure, and that's the quickest way to get a kid to fold on you like a lawn chair is to be that guy that doesn't let them have a voice or makes them suffer for choices that you allowed them to make.
Right. When I was OC, the head coach wanted to be their best friend. So we had nobody with like an authoritative figure, So I had to become that person because I saw this happen. Our corner and a wide receiver were going at it in a game. And I said on the headset, I was like, this is going to be bad. We need to watch our guy. He's getting bad. What happened? They start punching each other, and our kid threw a punch, and the refs come over and talk. I said, our kid's going to get thrown out. Well, thank God they didn't. They just kind of let it go. He put him back out there, and I said, you got to bring him back. He cannot be out there right now. No, it's fine. It's passion. And so I realized we need an authoritative figure. So I forced myself to be that person. So I became the guy I was yelling all the time, just because like kids were getting away with everything. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't laid down at the beginning. Like, this is not what happens. This is not how we act in
Mm.
practice. Like, this is how we conduct ourselves. And so I forced that. And my last year at that school, I did not like one practice. I would go home, I had a headache, I was mad. I think that's why I have gray hairs and white hairs popping up still. So then when I came up here and worked for a different team, I started to realize like that's not who I am. I was forcing it. Now I get after it. Every coach gets after it. But now it translates to a game. Like I find myself not yelling as much. I think the last time I've yelled, all of our offensive linemen were I was offensive line coach. They were arguing with each other. They were blaming each other. So then I yelled. I wasn't yelling about what they did. I was yelling about, shut your
Better.
mouth, sit down.
Yeah.
um, I think that's the real last time I yelled in a game. Like I might yell to get after, like you're pumped up, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't pull a kid over and be like, why did you not do this, 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 and this? It was like, okay, you're supposed to block that guy. What did you see? From an offensive lineman perspective, like you're supposed to block him. What did you see? What did I not see? Now, if I don't like the answer, I might take a deep breath and go, okay. That's where the yelling comes out. Like, you didn't do what we did in practice. And then you walk away. But
Yeah.
it wasn't like you're
Well,
dumb, you're stupid, and all that. It was
that's the thing is you can always determine whether it's ignorance or laziness by the way they answer the question.
right.
And then you know how to address the player. So
And each kid's different too. Like you have to figure out how you get to that kid. I had a couple kids you had to yell at them or like get into them, especially offensive line. My offensive line coaches, we have our own language. We have our own language, how we talk to each other. I had one or two kids, if you were very nice to them, it didn't click with them. You had to get after them. They needed that. So you figured it out. Then some kids, it's not like when we all played, we all got yelled at. It was no, come here, baby, like whatever, whisper sweet nothings. People that don't know, coaches were also therapists. So when you figure it out, you bring that kid over and you're like,
yep.
because some kids you might just say that to them, okay, what'd you see? Oh, it's okay. Well, here you go. Some kids, you have to yell for them to be like, I know, like I get it. And then they click out of it.
Yeah, the psychology of dealing with it was that's like a really, really fascinating part for me. Especially being my career outside of coaching is marketing, is buyer behavior and just psychology of just consumers period carries over into not diagnosing kids but just understanding their thought process and the approach. A lot of that stuff, that's another little thing to add to the long list of young coaches to think about, because you don't understand, and a lot of the young coaches don't understand that there's going to be times where you're giving kids rides home because they don't have anybody else to give them rides home.
Yep.
So you end up becoming therapist best friend on the side, trying to figure out how to reach this kid and help make their lives better. So it is tough. So there's a lot that goes into coaching that sometimes the guys getting into it just don't think about.
Or one school I was at, we made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and they had them before the game because it was some type of protein. And then after the game, some kids, do you mind if I take some home?
Yep.
And they give it to mom and dad or their grandma, or they eat it, or we have team meals on Thursdays. You figured out who needed it. And hey, you know what? Us coaches, we don't need to eat, or like, we don't need a second plate. You guys take a second plate home. And that was their dinner. That's what they
Yep.
had. Uh, and I didn't realize that's why I worked in a certain school like that. And it opened my eyes of they needed me more than I needed them. If that, I know that sounds bad, but like they
No,
needed me,
that's true.
like, so, oh, I've said that the way it sounds, I'm sorry, the way it sounds bad, but like they needed me more, I needed them. Like I had an apartment to come home to. I had this. I didn't know where they were going.
Yep.
I didn't know where they were walking off to. They didn't have cars, or if they, I had to go home or do whatever. I don't know where they're walking to. I don't know when they open their door, what's going to be there. I knew when I walked in, we had an apartment, we have heat, we have this, we work hard for it, but some of those kids just don't have that.
Yeah. That is the hardest part for me in coaching, is because like I said, I think I said it before we started the podcast about the number of kids that we have here. Um, the 17-year-old son, 15-year-old son, 14-year-old daughter, 7-year-old son, and 5-year-old daughter. For me, I love kids, and that's the hardest part of coaching at my age with the experience is not installing, it's not the execution, it's not the play calling, it's trying to figure out how to flip the switch, because if I don't, I spend a lot of that time thinking, does so and so have a place to sleep? Does so and so has he eaten? Right? Do we need to order some pizza and have it delivered somewhere? Like what, like, and that's not good for them to eat pizza all the time, but it's not good to not eat anything. So
Right.
that's the hardest part for me. Coaching is loving kids the way that I do, because we're a big family and I love my children and I just love children in general, but is trying to figure out how to flip that switch and kind of turn it off.
And we learn it every year, changes, and we learn something new how to get to these kids. Um, so I've taken a load of your time. I didn't realize that these rabbit holes we jumped down. So here's my last question because I've taken all your time. Who should be hired at South Carolina or Vanderbilt? Put you on the spot. I think Monken or Coach Ken needs a shot. I think they have
I,
to be thrown in.
I think Monken would probably be the better fit for South Carolina or for Vanderbilt, just because um, they're a school that already understands that they're going to be an underdog. So they, you know, I think adapting, but I mean, who knows? If he goes away from a military school, does he adapt what he does? You know, who's to say that he does what he only does what he does for tradition's sake? I mean,
That's
he
what they
could.
said.
Um, I don't know. It depends on, because I think that there are some really good NFL coordinators that could come down and take over at South Carolina and do well. Um, what's his name with the Chiefs?
Oh, I
Bieniemy?
know. Yeah.
Is that, yeah? Is that him?
Hmm.
I don't know if he would go to college. I think he might get a shot with another NFL team, but somebody like that, I think, could come down to the college level and and take what they're doing that's good in the NFL and even expand it even more, because the college game is going to be more wide open in your choices of play calling and design. With NFL, it has to be a little bit more watered down because of the athleticism, but when you can recruit to get disparities and really create those opportunities, I think it would give someone with a really good mind. But I have no idea how to answer that question.
I was like, I'm gonna put him on the spot. No,
Yeah.
I said Monken should go to South Carolina, but then Vanderbilt opened up, and I said, okay, Coach Sheffer, we all did a show on this. Who should run the triple option? So, like, who should get it? But one thing they've talked about, I know some of the Monken family here in Illinois, they're all over the place because that's where he's from. He's from Illinois, and I know some of the family. He's not married to the option, like what they're doing. I think he's doing it because that's what fits. Because at Georgia Southern, he was more pistol stuff. People don't remember. So I
Hmm.
think if he goes to Vanderbilt, he has that high education again. He has these kids like a Northwestern. And so I think that's where he should go. I said South Carolina just because it's tough football, tough kids. But I don't, they've already come out, fans have already said, like, don't hire him. We're never going to watch a game if you hire Monken and this and that. And I said, you need a culture guy more than X's and O's because it's a mess. Vanderbilt's a mess. South Carolina's a mess. You need a culture guy.
I will say this. And I would hate to see him split up from Gus Malzahn again, but Chad Morris is OC
Yeah,
at Auburn. I think because everybody in South Carolina will remember what he did with Clemson.
yeah. He had a
So
bad time there at Arkansas, but he he didn't forget how to coach overnight.
no, but if you've got good talent, you're going to be able to execute. That was a tough fit.
Yeah, he's another one, but just because I saw fans going off about Monken for South Carolina, I was like, hold on a second.
Yeah, that's silly.
Well, that was like when
That's SEC.
Ken, well, when Ken was going to get high, he was interviewing for the Arizona job all those years ago, and that quarterback tweeted out like, if he comes here, we're leaving. We don't run the option or whatever. The quarterback at the time tweeted, and so they didn't interview him again. Then that kid had a horrible season. Like it was just karma. And so we all talked about it and we said, if you're going to hire a Monken or a Coach Ken, it needs to be kind of like what Johnson, he went to Georgia Tech, not this big time. It's not Georgia, it's Georgia Tech. It needs
Yeah.
to be a Vanderbilt or something like go there, do what you do. If you can build a culture, then it'll work out. Like I always talk about Northwestern. I'm a big Fitzgerald fan. He doesn't have all the talent. That's a hard school to get into, but guess what? He's built a culture and Monken and Ken can do that. So
Yeah.
I think they need to be in the conversation.
Well, I mean, Stanford, not
Yeah.
easy to. Harbaugh did amazing there. And then what's his name that's there now?
Oh, I don't remember. I know like he's winning.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I think that it just goes all the way back to what we were saying when we first started talking. Systematic thinking is culture. You know, that's just the way that it is.
Yep. And that's a perfect way to end this because I've taken all your time. Trust the system and trust the process. Look at Alabama and everything else. Look at what they do.
I will say this, there was a quote, and I can't remember who it come from. It's not mine, but I wrote it on the board when we got to Castlewood, and it fits in with what we were talking about on these certain schools needing a culture guy. Is I wrote the lowest level of performance that we accept becomes our culture. I
Hmm.
can't remember where I got that from, but it stayed on the board all year. And that rings true. And I think that a lot of times schools don't take that into consideration when
Hmm.
they're hiring for these college positions.
It's all about the money and they got to keep the boosters happy and they see spread power. They see this. Oh, these are winning championships. Don't bring in Monken or whoever's going to run this option.
Yeah.
I guarantee Monken would show up, run maybe a wing raid. Who knows? Like he would come in and adapt. People don't think that. Like they need to go back and find Georgia Southern. He adapted. He had pistol stuff. He had under center.
Mm-hmm.
He coached with Paul Johnson. He coached at Navy. Like he's been around. He knows. And I think you're right. I think he probably does it for tradition's sake too. Like this is what they've done. This is what fits. I have some hard nosed, disciplined kids. Why not do it?
Yeah.
I go to Vanderbilt in the SEC or South Carolina, maybe I can, spread it out a little bit, not to throw it, but maybe I can line up this way. Maybe I'm pistol and I run option that way.
Yep.
Like he'll stick to what he does, but he'll find different ways to do it because he'll have a bigger budget. He'll have a bigger this and Vanderbilt and South Carolina boosters, if they ever listen, which they won't, you need a culture guy more than a defensive coordinator and offense coordinator. You need a culture. And then even if he loses, but he's building that culture and he gets fired, whoever comes in, that culture will be there. So you just gotta find a guy to build it up.
Yep.
So, well, coach, I appreciate you taking all this time. I apologize for how long it took, but I appreciate you coming
No,
on.
it's been good. I've enjoyed it. It's a good conversation.
It was a lot of rabbit holes when people listen later. It's a lot of rabbit holes.
They'll
But I'm
have
getting better at the podcast. The better I get, And the more Joe Rogan I listen to, the more rabbit holes I start finding.
That's the good part of it.
So everybody out there, thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.